being completely honest, there's a lot of stress that I have right now. And I imagine that's kind of the same for a lot of us. So much of our lives gets really stressful. And when you're in a transition period, going from one part of your life to the next, that as well is so stressful. So, in this week's episode, we're going to talk about being mindful about your stress, how you can go from calm to distress, or trying to find that sweet spot called Eustress. Keeping everything simple, let's jump right in. Welcome back to Keeping Everything Simple. I'm your host and fellow learner, Michael Klucas, and on this show, we try to boil down complex topics into simple, actionable tips. So, the thing I wanted to go over is stress. And the reason I'm talking about this is if you've been following the podcast and following me on Instagram, KES Studios, you'll know that right now I am currently unemployed. And for a lot of people, very understandably so, saying you're unemployed is in itself a very stressful word, because so much of what we do revolves around having that steady income, having money coming into our bank accounts. And for myself, even to right now know that I have my safety net and everything, it's still stressful knowing that I don't know, where my next paycheck's coming from, how I'm going to get it to happen. And even though I have applications sent out, I have to wait back. At the current moment, I am at the mercy of the employers. And that's hard. For a lot of people, that's hard. So the thing is, though, a lot of us are stressed, and it's about a whole bunch of different things. And so whether you're in leadership, whether you are part of a large team, a small team, whether you're unemployed or employed right now, stress is inevitable. And so I'm talking about the different variations to it. And so the piece I mentioned earlier is this idea of eustress, and that is kind of the in-between spot between stress, growth, and satisfaction. Like, these three factors have to be in alignment in a way that you feel actually charged or empowered by for it to actually be eustress. And this is as compared to calm, in which, growth may be a little stagnant. You're not actually doing too much because there's not something that's really pushing you to grow. And it's kind of the idea of like, going back to working out, using this as like an analogy, is that your muscles grow when you tear your muscle fibers and they repair themselves. Your abilities and your skills grow when you push them to limits and you put them under stress. And so when you're in a calm phase, that can be good. However, if you're there too long, it can actually lead to stagnation. And then the inverse of this is distress, where you have so much stress going on. Maybe you're a perfectionist, maybe you have OCD, whatever the situation may be. There is so much stress that can just accumulate, and that can, manifest itself in health problems, mental health problems. It can take its physical toll on your body and also just your overall output and quality of life, where because you may be so stressed, you may not have enough energy to go socialize. You may be so stressed, you may not have enough energy to go to the gym because so much mental energy is being dedicated towards minimizing or managing just the levels of stress that you have. And that's not a good place to be in. So eustress, again, is that mixture between stress, growth, and satisfaction. And that's a spot that I think we all really have to strive for, and that's going to be different for everyone. And so I really have to encourage you then, ask yourself, right now, are you stressed? If you are, what is stressing you out? Is it work? Is it a certain relationship? Is it friends, family? Are you concerned about maybe the future? Are you concerned maybe about the past? Whatever it is, ask yourself, are you stressed right now? And then really dive into what might be the causes of that stress. So the reason I'm saying this is this goes hand in hand with the idea of kind of like emotional management, in which you want to name something to tame it, because it takes away some of that mystery and unease and uncertainty if you're able to distinctly say, hey, this is what the problem is. This is where my stress is coming from. And so an example I can give is that if you are, say, working in a large team and there's so many things coming at you all at once, That stress may be the fact that, hey, maybe you don't have good communication with your actual boss. Maybe you have direct reports that you aren't totally sure how to manage. So it may be a relationship stress or relational based, or it could just be output based and you're concerned about your productivity because you feel like you should be doing more, but you're lagging behind, and the thoughts just go on and on. So really ask yourself and be honest, and it's okay to be so. If you are stressed, just ask why, and from there, figure out what can you do to address it. How can you lessen that stress? How can you maybe share that with others, share that burden, and at the same time, find ways to minimize it as well? Because some stress is good, but too much stress, just as anything, can be very, very bad. And again, right now, I'm stressed about the idea of finding my next job. I'm stressed about the idea of what am I going to do to bring money in? How am I going to actually further my career and reach a point where I'm actively doing something that helps people, where I'm actively doing something that allows me to feel fulfilled in my purpose and in my vocational calling? And there's so much around that we still have to ask ourselves, because as I started rattling things off, there's a lot of different stressors you're going to have in your life. And being able to adjust to them will help you out so much. And this is where I brought up mindfulness, in that mindfulness simplified is just awareness without judgment. So being able to understand that there's going to be thoughts that are a part of you that you can't really control, and you want to let them pass on by. Think of it like either cars on a freeway or a boat on a river, where you can see it go by and then you might give it a little wave, acknowledge it, but let it keep going. You're not going to jump in front of a boat or swim out to the middle of the river and say, hey, stop right there. I need to address everything on this boat. There's a barnacle over here. The sails aren't pulled up. It's kind of ridiculous to think about it like that. But it's still very important that mindfulness, again, is just simplifying it down to let your thoughts exist, let them pass by without judgment. And that can help, especially when you are trying to name, again, stressors in your life. Because if you can name it without that judgment, you can address it in a much more level-headed and clear manner. Because you don't want so much of it that you get overwhelmed and feel that you can't actually fix the problem or even just alleviate some of the pressure. It's also important just to bring up how much eustress is a balancing act. So again, those three things I mentioned, the stress, the growth, the satisfaction, those three factors need to be balanced out. You can't just, jump right into a stressful situation and think, I'm going to use all this stress, all this anxiety, all this worry, and I'm going to level up. Nothing's going to stop me. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. And at the same time, it's understanding that you can't just go into something because it's pure satisfaction. Because if you're going into something only because it satisfies you and no other reason, to me, that kind of sounds like the grounds for an unhealthy relationship or some form of addiction to, manifest itself in some capacity. It's not a good recipe for success. And at the same time, then there's the idea of growth, where if you're only going after growth without the balance of the other two factors, then it may not be growth in the trajectory that you want. It's again this idea of, are you in the driver's seat or is someone else in the driver's seat for you? And eustress is you in the driver's seat, finding that balance between, hey, this is stressful and I feel myself being pushed. I feel my limits being stretched. I'm reaching plateaus and then I'm breaking through them, and I'm growing every time I do. And there's satisfaction that comes from not just these goals, but the overall journey, the overall process. And that balance can be thrown out of sorts very easily. It can be, hey, there's a new project on your plate that you have to balance out because it's a high priority with everything else. There's a new team member that comes in that you actually don't mesh well with, and you have a hard time working with them or even having a good conversation with them. Or even you may be given an opportunity that you second guess yourself for, or actually you may lose an opportunity, and that hit to your growth and your potential hurts. These are all different things that can occur. And I will say, probably at some point in your life, and some point in your career, they will occur. And that's hard. finding the way to bring it back to baseline, bring it back to that balance, so that way those factors aren't overpowering each other. Obviously, at different points, one may have more priority than another, but it's still trying to get back to how am I growing, how am I using this experience, and how am I generating eustress so I'm performing at my best 90% of the time, 95% of the time, whatever it is. It's just being able to give your best fully whenever it's asked of you within that eustress zone. And that's why I encourage you guys to practice mindfulness. So again, simplifying it down to self-awareness without judgment. Being self-aware just allows you to understand when you're falling out of balance or what things you need to do to bring that balance back into play. And the best example I have is for myself, knowing that I have a lot of stress right now in regards to finding my next place of employment, finding my next job, finding my next step in my career. And the distinct factors here is that I want to have a good income, I want to have good benefits, and I want to be able to impact the largest amount of people positively and move forward in my career towards the direction I want to go. And these factors, I can name them and look at them without judgment and just understand that they are part of the overall story and the overall life that I want to lead. And that's because I can be aware of them without judgment for it. I don't look at it and think, okay, I want to make $50,000 after taxes or $60,000 before taxes here in Washington and think, oh, wow, that is so unachievable, or wow, why would I even want that? I could live off so much less, or wow, why am I shooting myself in the foot? I could go for so much more. That's not the point. The point for me is to have that awareness of like, hey, from where I'm at right now in my life, in my trajectory, this feels optimistic and at the same time realistic. And it feels like I can make it happen. And so I'm not looking at it with the eye of judgment. Instead, I'm looking at it through the eye of opportunity. How am I going to get to that point? And how am I setting myself up to do so? Again, without judging myself for any of the mishaps I'm going to have along the way or any of the shortcomings that I may encounter in this overall process. And for yourself, no matter, again, what point you're in, these are 3 things that I would probably encourage you to do to manage your stress levels. And first and foremost is practice mindfulness. Being able to name it, you'll tame it, because that's going to help you understand and identify what problems you may be facing or what internally might be going on without the eye and without the glasses of judgment on yourself, because you are going to be the hardest critic out of everyone in your life. You will be hardest on yourself. And from there, it's then also improving your tolerance to saying no, because it gets uncomfortable. And the example again is the salary that I want to make. It's saying no to less because I don't want to dip below a certain point if I can help it. And then understanding that I want more. However, everyone else will probably tell me no. And that's because of where I'm at in my career and in my journey. And that, again, feels uncomfortable. So you want to improve that tolerance to the uncomfortable, because there's going to be so much of it you're going to encounter while you're in the midst of a stressful situation and just in general throughout your life. So this will improve your overall quality of life by getting used to that. And then finally, with mindfulness, then the other 2 things you can do to really elevate that practice is speak it out loud or write it down. So either, again, sharing that burden, sharing your thoughts with other people, or writing it down to get them out of your head, because letting them just kind of sit and stew in your brain is not, again, the healthiest combination, especially when there's so many other ways that you can release stress, so many other ways that you can connect with others that involve you actively getting those thoughts out into the open, so that way you have more insight into them rather than just letting them get lost within the myriad of hundreds of other thoughts you can have every single day. And I want you guys to feel going into this next week that whatever is stressing you out, that you can control it to some degree, that in some way you will be able to find the way forward and find a way to manage it, because you don't want to let that stress get into the driver's seat, take control of the vehicle, and take control of your path. Ultimately, no matter what you do, stress will be involved. And at the same time, no matter what you do, you can always control how you react to a situation and what you do going forward. So again, I encourage you, be mindful in your approach. Don't judge yourself for the stressful situations that you may be in. Don't judge yourself for having stress. Instead, let that guide you and let that uncomfortability be an indicator on how to move forward, on what path to take without sacrificing the career, the journey, the destination that you're looking for. And this may not come easy. For a lot of people, this idea of getting into your own head and really examining your thoughts can in itself be stressful. The important thing here is that you don't try to be perfect with it, that you don't try to believe that you can only do it if you get it right the first time. It's understanding that if this next week you don't do as well, the week after that, you go for 1% better. Every single time you try, 1% better. Improve one small thing, change one small way you look at it, change one thought. 1% better will help you minimize that stress. It'll help you improve your mindfulness by just continuing to practice it and continue to be intentional about it. And so let me know in the comments below, if you're watching this on YouTube, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you on an average day-to-day basis? 10 being very high, 1 being very low. And what causes it? So what causes you to be super stressed, or what causes you to be super chilled out? And I want to make sure that we are supporting each other in this endeavor to build a more simplified way of looking at our careers and vocations, and at the same time, improving just the quality of life that we lead. Keeping everything simple. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure you like and subscribe. This helps the podcast grow and reach other people just like you. If listening to this on Spotify or any other podcast app, be sure you leave us a rating. It helps other people discover the show. I hope you have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next video.